Welcome to the Conscious Solutions Podcast, where we highlight leaders, founders, and practitioners who are shaping the future of healing, recovery, and human transformation. This show is dedicated to the people who help the people, the innovators building clinics, nonprofits, recovery programs, wellness practices, and community-based solutions that create real impact in the world. I'm Brandon Barclay, and over the last 8 years, I've had the privilege of working alongside organizations across the alternative wellness and mental health landscape, from retreat centers and practitioners to nonprofits, recovery programs, and community-driven initiatives. And one thing has become very clear. The people doing the most meaningful work are often the ones with the least support, visibility, and resources. And this podcast is designed to change that by sharing the real stories, lessons, challenges, and breakthroughs from the leaders on the front line of human healing. Thanks for being here, and let's dive into today's conversation. So you're listening, or you might be watching, the Conscious Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Barclay, and today I'm joined by Kathi Miracle, founder of My Silver Tsunami, a platform focused on helping individuals, organizations, and communities prepare for the realities and opportunities of an aging population, and author of Your Ticket to Compassion, Navigating the Dementia Experience, which will be available soon. In this conversation, we explore Kathi's journey, what it takes to build a business around longevity and workforce transition, and how systems need to evolve to meet what's coming. For those tuning in for the first time, we are Conscious Solutions. We build Foundation Core, a proprietary operating backbone that replaces stacked SaaS tools and turns operations into an asset your organization actually owns. If you're ready to reduce the noise and build a real operational foundation, DM us the word growth. Kathi, I want to say thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time and what you're bringing to the work that you're doing. Welcome to the Conscious Solutions Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Well, I'm looking forward to this conversation. I really enjoyed the last time that we got to speak. Maybe start by telling our listeners where you're calling in from.
Denver, Colorado. And today it's a little snowy and cold, which I think what most people view Colorado as in the wintertime and especially at Christmas. But yeah, it's a little cold today.
Well, I hope that you're staying warm, that you've got some thick socks or gloves out there. Kathi, I'd love to start with where your journey began as somebody who's now, heavily invested and influential in the world of aging.
I've gotten asked that question a few times in my career. I spent over 30 years working in senior living. I started my career as a CNA in a nursing home on an Alzheimer's unit in my college town in northern Colorado. I used to kind of wonder that myself, but I lost my grandparents at a very young age. My maternal grandfather was passed before I was ever born. And my paternal grandmother passed before I was born. And then my maternal grandmother died 10 days before my 13th birthday. And a year later, my grandfather died 5 days before Christmas. So kind of tough to lose grandparents, between your birthday and Christmas and a year apart. And my parents told me that I used to just gravitate to older adults at church, in the grocery stores, at restaurants in our neighborhood. And I used to just love listening to their stories. They were so interesting. They'd seen so many changes in their lifetime. They'd probably seen more changes in their lifetime than I would ever see in mine. These are individuals who went from not having indoor plumbing, to having indoor plumbing, or automobiles that have been, how they've advanced over the years, or even going from black and white to color televisions. I think of my own house and how many TVs do I have in my house? And there was one TV in a house growing up, and it was black and white. And so I giggle a little bit when people don't know what I Love Lucy is, or the Andy Griffith Show, right? And I just have had the honor and pleasure of being able to take care of so many amazing individuals who did so many amazing things, from NASA to a gentleman who painted the bottom of the Enola Gay, to, a woman who had 14 children all at home. I mean, just some amazing stories.
And I can certainly see that transition then, you worked in, kind of an aging facility early on. At what point did My Silver Tsunami become a reality for you?
Um, it became probably a reality more for my husband than it did me. I spent so much time working in senior living and I specialized working with individuals with dementia and their families. And I loved it. I mean, that was my first CNA job. I got to work on the Alzheimer's unit. And what I learned over the years is people really love working with dementia or they hate it. And the only in between was the families who get to travel that road because they don't have a choice. And, for years, my husband would watch me and the hours I dedicated to those jobs and the time I spent on the phone with families on in the evenings, on weekends. I mean, I was so passionate about making sure that I could ensure quality of life for an individual and make sure families truly understood how to travel this journey. And through that, probably, oh gosh, for years, he kept saying, you need to write a book or you need to just have your own company. And I sort of did this to him and poo-pooed the idea a little bit and just like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't really think about it." And in the last few years, he just knows how passionate about I am, and he's like, "You could help so many more people if we launched your own company and you had your own rules and you could dictate your own schedule and when you traveled and when you didn't." And, I met 2 pretty amazing individuals, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, right in there, and they really pushed me also. Both of them had had family members with dementia. And as I sat and talked with them, they encouraged me as well and said, this would be so helpful for families if we had only known this. And they, partnered up with my husband and attacked from three sides and said, you need to just do this. This is something you need to do. And they were in it with me and would help. And so I had been asked to be a keynote speaker at a conference for family caregivers. And so we decided we would launch Silver Tsunami right before that conference so we could talk about it. And from there, the discussions grew about writing a book for families and helping them even further. So that's kind of how it all came together and how it got launched. And I guess some people would say I came into this with them dragging me and kicking me, screaming, I was like, I don't know. And but once we got into it and I really started learning about and interacting with families who really this is a frustrating thing for them and the aging process and they think they're making good decisions based on the information they have and most people don't know what questions they should be asking or what information they should be looking for, whether they're trying to keep somebody at home or whether they're trying to choose a senior living community. And that's where I really come in with my experience and can say, have you thought about or have you considered this? Anywhere from trying to keep a family member at home to legal planning and knowing what questions you should be asking your estate planning attorney, to even simple things like what happens to the family pet? Like if somebody gets dementia or someone passes away, what's going to happen to the family pet? Or what are you doing about weapons they may have? I mean, those are some things that people don't stop and think about. And so we try to really guide and direct them and handhold with them along the way.
And so you're not just working with people who might be experiencing, memory loss, but you're really working with families.
I do both. Yes. I've it's somewhat compartmentalized a little bit. So if I broke it down a little bit, I have had great success in working with individuals, especially in early stages of dementia. When we implement a lifestyle program for them, we've been able to reverse their cognitive decline in a lot of situations. And the good news is it's their doctor telling them that the cognitive decline is being reversed, not us. I mean, if we told them that, it might sound a little biased. So when a doctor has done a cognitive assessment and 6 months later the doctor does another one and they're getting better scores on that, It somewhat baffles the physician. I will tell you that I've had some interesting conversations with some doctors. But what they find is that what we're doing is really working. It's just about being consistent with these 7 things. For families, at times I get called and the person is already down the dementia journey and they're having difficulty because the person, I get more phone calls than I get like, let me be proactive about this. Um, where a person wandered away from home. Here in the last year, I've had 3 different phone calls where someone got in a car and then was several hours from home or several miles from home and didn't know how to get back, and police were involved and searches were happening. In Colorado, we have what's called the Silver Alert, much like the Amber Alert for a missing child. The Silver Alert is established for a missing older adult. So I've seen a few of those. There was one, I was actually driving on the highway on a Saturday morning and saw the silver alert. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so terrible. And so as I was digging into it, it was actually one of my friends. It was in one of their neighbors whose parent. And so I was like, oh dear. And so we usually, when we're working with families, we're trying to help them understand maybe they want to keep somebody at home. So what needs to happen to the home environment to make that happen? And sometimes that's maybe a remodel of a bathroom, or maybe it's simplifying what's in their environment. There's a lot of things that can be done at home to keep somebody living at home with quality. Sometimes that's no, we have to choose a senior living community. Okay. So if that's the decision that needs to be made, then let's sit down and break down the questions that what it's important to you. What do you want them to have? What do you believe their care should look like? And then we develop questions around that as they go and tour places. In Colorado here, I can pull surveys from the state health department so I can help families understand this was their last survey. These are the complaints that have been made against them. You may want to ask the questions. How did they resolve this? What was their plan of correction? So there's a lot of things that families don't know what to ask and or what to be searching for or what to be doing. And when they have that information, I just think education is power and that they just feel more equipped to now continue down the journey that they're on.
And what I got from our prior conversation is this really turned into a body of work. It
Mhm,
turned into an education platform. It turned into a methodology that,
mhm,
as you were just saying, doctors are seeing the results and the efficacy from,
mhm.
but also the support that's being provided to the families, and and not just singular, but on a broader scale. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. And we do a lot of education too when we are working with an individual who has dementia. There are many times families want to know, is this going to be my future? You know, and so we do a lot of education around this 7 things, this lifestyle program, so that they can stay cognitively strong. I mean, even if it's a spouse, the spouse has to stay cognitively strong to take care of the individual who's cognitively declining. So, how do we keep them cognitively strong, physically strong, emotionally strong, mentally strong, and very healthy? Because statistically, the person providing care is going to have far more serious health concerns than the person they're providing care to. And I try to mitigate those statistics as much as I can when I'm working with individuals.
Right. If you go back to some of the early days, what were some of those growing pains that you had to go through as you kind of made this foray into being an entrepreneur and running your own organization and getting it off the ground, and then keeping the wheels on the bus, as I like to say?
Um, well, anybody who chooses to launch a business, this isn't easy. I mean, there's pros and cons to everything, right? And we call it blessing and curses also. Launching a business, I think that for any business, I think out there, launching it is just making sure people know who you are and what you do. It is an incredible amount of networking, education, being involved. Um, I learned a long time ago that people do business with people, they don't do business with businesses. And so the more people who can get to know you and understand what you're about, then they trust you. And then they try because it's very hard when you're going to recommend something. It's easy to say, "Oh yeah, I got this drink at Starbucks." Everybody knows what Starbucks is. Everybody knows what Chili's is. I mean, those are nationwide companies who have built their brand. But when someone like me comes along, who the heck are you? Because so many people have been conditioned to, you can't reverse dementia. Well, there are some dementias you cannot reverse if they get to a certain point, and there's a lot that can be done because we now know that we can identify changes in the brain up to 20 years prior to a diagnosis. So there's a lot of things we know now, but people are so inundated for what they hear on TV or the radio or media, or if it's on the internet, it must be true. Um, and so, it's a lot of trying not to convince people, but just to really educate them, on what I do and how I can do it. And no one wants to, they're very protective of their own personal brand, which they should be. And so if I recommend you and things go bad, people are going to be mad at me because I recommended you, and I don't want people mad at me. And so I have spent, immense amount of time over the last couple of years really networking and people asking me questions and being able to test me out. Um, but what's been a really truly amazing is the people who maybe doubted what I could do have become true believers when they see their own cognitive strength strengthening, or they were more productive at work, or we do see like their doctor is telling them the cognitive skills got better. So we have slowly started having this really positive ripple effect. And last year, I was contracted to do a lot of dementia training for a rural healthcare system in Kansas, which was fantastic. This year, I've already been asked to be a speaker at a health and wellness event for a chamber of commerce who really wants to promote about being healthy mentally, emotionally, physically, and where does that start? There's a very famous guru, brain health individual named Dr. Daniel Amen, who has claimed that 2026 will be the year of brain health, where people will really truly understand the importance of staying cognitively strong.
Wow. Yeah, and we need it, right? It's we talk about going to the gym and, strengthening your muscles, and we talk about eating well, so that you can maintain, your the other parts of your health goals. But I don't see much out there around maintaining our brain health.
Yeah, it's and what's really ironic is that the Centers for Disease Control actually released a report in 2005 around brain health. So it's been out there for 20 years, and yet there's still very little known about brain health or how to stay cognitively strong. We know that the brain, through neuroplasticity, the brain has the ability to create new neural pathways. Each neural pathway is coated with myelin sheath, which is like, yeah, a protective coating. We know that myelin starts breaking down in our late 30s and early 40s, and the thinner it is or the more damaged it is, it's harder for the brain to process. But through neuroplasticity, the good news is myelin never stops growing. Neuroplasticity never stops happening in the brain. It will continue to grow and develop up until we take a final breath. So there are things that we can do to create new neural pathways for someone who's had a stroke or a brain injury. I've heard doctors tell families, well, this is all there'll ever be. And I'm like, that's so not true. We had a lady who two back-to-back strokes 3 years ago who was barely communicating. We had her talking in full sentences in 3 months. And so, I mean, she had a long ways to go, but the fact that we could get her to start communicating easier with families and her team, her medical team, everybody was just incredibly baffled. So we can do things when the brain has been damaged, and we can even do better stuff just to protect our cognitive health as we age.
Yeah, and it's so needed. I mean, I certainly, as I'm starting to feel my age a little bit as well, it's really becoming a reality for me. I'm looking at my family history and that sort of thing. And like, okay, I want to make sure that if my body makes it to 90 or more, that my mind makes it with it.
Yep. Yep. And dementia is the second most feared diagnosis in the world. Cancer of any kind is the first. And when we know that we can identify those changes in the brain up to 20 years prior to any diagnosis, we also know that we can change the course or the path for somebody where they never have to go down that. And even the cost of taking care of somebody with dementia is outrageous. I mean, I know that people look at the programs we offer and they think, "Ooh, that's expensive." And I'm like, let's start comparing that to what it actually costs to take care of an individual with dementia. And we don't look like that bad of an investment, to be perfectly honest. And we call it an investment because it's no different than when the people who, how much money do we spend on gym memberships or, organic food? We put a lot of money so that the rest of us can be healthy, like you said, that we have a healthy heart, that we don't develop diabetes. We do what we can to fight off cancer. But yet, people don't think that they need to invest the money to stay cognitively healthy. And I just sit there and go, well, you'll spend all this money doing this, but somehow the brain that really controls everything in your body, which is really the most important thing to protect, right? It's almost like telling somebody, like, they'll change the tires on their car. They'll make sure that the dent in the bumper got fixed, but they don't do anything to take care of the motor of the car. Well, what's going to happen to that car? It's going to fall apart. It's going to quit working. So it's the same theory, but yet, as individuals, as human beings, I don't think we've quite grasped that yet.
Right, right. Yeah, I think we're still trying to get our it kind of ironic to say, get our minds wrapped around, you know, brain health
Right.
and how that really impacts our quality of life. I mean, people see that, but to know that we can have an effect over it, that it's not something that, well, it either happens or it doesn't, that there's really a lot in the environment and a lot in our control that we can do about it.
That's exactly it. And when I speak at conferences or I do trainings, I'm speaking usually to a group of people, and I'll say, "Hey, anyone, do you want to raise your hand? How many of you have opened a refrigerator and you don't know if you were putting something in or taking something out?" And you'll hear people start laughing, or I'll say, "You walked into a room and you weren't quite sure what you walked in there for." And again, you get people to laugh because we all experience that brain fog or that lapse in a moment. And does it mean we're getting dementia? No, it doesn't mean that. It means a lot of other things. And so we dig deep into identifying the strengths and weaknesses of an individual's brain so that we can target the weaker skills so that, memory is better, and how they process information and how they pay attention and stay focused is where they want to be. And so it's because it happens to all of us, I think it's easy to also blow off or just say, oh, I just had a senior moment, or oh, I just had a busy day. I find people who excuse it away, and before they identify, like, this truly is going to be a challenge and it's going to just continue to be problematic.
Right, right. So, well, you mentioned it briefly there that you've had more than one speaking engagement. That this is something that you're really regarded as an expert in the field around the world now. Maybe
Yeah.
talk a little bit about the ways that you're bringing your work out into the world.
Well, the book is the first thing, and the book, Navigating the Dementia Experience, or Your Ticket to Compassion, Navigating the Dementia Experience, that was really written because of families who struggle taking care of somebody with dementia. That's really what that book is all about. And really, and even professional caregivers could probably glean a lot of great information from that. Other than that, I get asked a lot to come and speak about these 7 stepping stones, to implement in a lifestyle to stay cognitively strong. That has become a much more popular, presentation. I am partnering with estate planning attorneys because for them, if somebody is not cognitively strong, they can't sign the legal paperwork, and there's many times that I've talked to several estate planning attorneys who really question, does this person really understand what they're signing? Do they really understand what they're asking for? And that's an attorney's license on the line if they have somebody sign something that they shouldn't be. And so I'm starting to partner with estate planning attorneys just to help people understand the importance of staying cognitively strong, especially when you go into planning an estate. And then the estate planning attorneys talk a little bit more about what they do from their aspect and why they need to have somebody cognitively strong to sign their paperwork. So I've done that. I'm a nationally approved subject matter expert, so I work with attorneys on cases, and I do a lot of education with attorneys, with individuals, with companies that I'm helping either prosecute or I'm helping on the defense side. It really kind of depends where that education goes, but they get a lot of education around aging and what we look at from a regulatory standpoint or in a legal standpoint, or what they should be asking or what they should be looking for. From an educational standpoint, I work with Chamber of Commerce because they put on a lot of programs for their members. So I work with them. I work with healthcare systems and helping them better understand the dementia journey or how to help people stay cognitively strong. I've actually started working with nutritionists and, Western medicine. There's not a lot of people who have faith in Western medicine as much as they should. They work with practitioners, holistic practitioners. So I started working with them too on some things that I tell them, like, these are some of the things that I would be teaching your clients. So it's starting to spread out further than I never anticipated working with a nutritionist. I never anticipated working with a wellness individual. But I'm finding that they very much want this information for the clients who seek them out because they have diabetes or they have something going on that they don't feel good or they just constantly are fatigued. And why is that? And so there's a lot of things we start with, keeping the brain healthy, and some of that stuff starts dissipating for them.
Right, right. And talk about some impact there. I mean, you named so many organizations,
Mhm.
and clearly this is information that the world is ready to start to make some sense out of.
I think so. I think that we see it all the time when if you're on your phone, you'll see it a lot where it says, play this game and you improve your memory. Play this game for 15 minutes every day and improve your memory. One of the most important things that I emphasize to individuals is that there is no one thing that protects cognitive health. So just playing a game on your phone isn't going to do it. And in fact, when we do play games on computers and tablets and phones, what we're really doing is we gravitate to the things we enjoy and that are fun and that we like and that we're good at. And what we're doing is we're really focused on exercising the strong part of the brain. You're not focused on exercising the weak part of the brain. Because I have had people say, oh, my dad played crossword puzzles his whole life and still got dementia. Like, oh, that's why, because he was focused on the strong part of his brain. And so you're not going to take a pill. I get asked a lot of questions about supplements. And I say, well, let's first start that it's just that. It's a supplement. It's supplementing what you should be doing under these 7 components. It's not the end all fix all. People will buy, lion's mane, or they'll buy something thinking that's going to fix everything, and it doesn't. I even saw here recently on Facebook, buy this pillow and you'll have a better night's sleep. And I'm like, well, that might be true, but that's not going to fix your memory problems. It's a component and it helps. So, if I could emphasize anything to everybody, it would just be no one thing protects cognitive health. It is the combination of these 7 items, these 7 stepping stones, that does it. And when you do it consistently, we know that you can reverse cognitive decline. You can delay the progression of it. People can stay cognitively strong. And it's really the starting point. And if you're doing those things, again, because nutrition and hydration are part of those, if you're doing those correctly, then it helps with other, heart disease or diabetes or other physical or medical ailments that people have.
Right. There's not going to be some negative side effects to strengthening the brain and taking care of our cognitive health.
No, there usually is not. No.
Yeah, if anything, it's going to support the other systems of health in the body. Right.
That's exactly it. It's gonna support everything else that your body's gonna need. It's really should be the starting point, but it's also one of the things we know the least about. I sat in on a webinar of doctors and scientists about 18 months ago, and they basically what they were talking about is the study of the brain and the information around the brain is gonna be the last frontier for us as human beings. And so it's really interesting to listen to. I love when I can sit in a room with doctors and scientists who get it and who understand that, because I run into so many other professionals who will tell families, this is all it's ever going to be. This is all you can ever expect, that you're not going to be able to do anything. The journey is the journey. And at some point, that is true information. If you've gotten so far in the dementia journey, you're not going to fix the damage. The journey is now the journey. So it's really important to be proactive, or as soon as someone gets a diagnosis, to really that's when we can be most effective.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and preemptive, right? Like let's start now before we have problems that we have to try to attend to.
That's it, that's exactly it. I mean, I've worked even with young kids who surprisingly enough, I had a family who I worked with because the little girl was 5 years old and had already sustained 2 pretty massive head injuries at 5 years old. And I thought, "Oh my goodness, how is that possible? But it was really affecting how this little girl learned communication, learned she couldn't learn to read, and it was gonna affect her the rest of her life. And so we just started working at that. I mean, I specialize working in older adults. That's what I specialize in. But I've worked with some pretty young individuals who've had car accidents, who've been in a skiing accident, who have had slips and falls, fallen off a horse, multiple concussions through sports. So it's amazing the people I end up working with, beyond working with just older adults.
Right. Maybe tell us a little bit about what's upcoming in the book. I know it's going to be out soon, but can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about that for us?
Yes, as much as I kind of just said, no, I'm not going to write a book, and I did it for years. Having actually gone through and spent a lot of focused time in 25 writing this book and finishing it on New Year's Eve. I actually finished it. I promised my husband, I promised my assistant it would be done in 25. So I think like at 8 p.m. on New Year's Eve, I had written the final sentence for this book. So it was really good to do that, and I learned a lot. I've shown the table of contents or the chapter outline to several people who know me, who've worked with me, and it's always interesting for them to say, "Well, have you thought about this or have you thought about that?" And so we actually added a couple of chapters I had not anticipated in the beginning, but it's going to be. I think it was well worth the time to have written it. It really helps, new caregivers, caregivers who've been doing this for a while, exhausted caregivers, both family caregivers and also professional caregivers. There's a lot of things that I learned through my career. There was a lot of mistakes that I made, that I would hope someone else wouldn't make them. There were things that when you get really super frustrated over, like, someone who's maybe losing weight or won't eat, we give tips and tricks and techniques and, "Have you thought about this? And here's what you can do to help maintain weight or help gain weight." And those are things that you're not gonna find on the Alzheimer's Association website. You're not gonna find through Teepa Snow. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Probably 80% of my book, if you really sat down and took the time and really Googled all of these people, all of these organizations, you could probably put all of that information together in one spot. I've spent over 30 years in senior living and specializing in working with dementia. So there's a lot of things we made mistakes on. There were a lot of things we learned through that process. There were a lot of things we did right. And we learned, like, one of the things people talk about a lot is sundowning. Not that that's not challenging or problematic, but if you're proactive in your approach to caring for someone with dementia, you can really minimize the effects of what sundown can happen during sundowning time. But family caregivers never get taught this stuff. They just, they get a diagnosis in their doctor's office. I've heard so many families who call me and will say, "Well, the doctor said, my dad has dementia and said I'll see you in 6 months." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I have here recently a family who contacted me where the individual was diagnosed with dementia by a primary physician in December, but the first opportunity to get in to see the neurologist that been recommended is May of this year. Well, what happens during that time when that's the critical time that they really need to be doing things, not just sitting and waiting. And so our specialists, as people are aging, because the baby boomers, we have 10 to 15,000 people every day turning 65 right now, our specialists like cardiologists and neurologists, their schedules are getting inundated. And so it does take a long time to get in to see a specialist. And so what this book really helps people do is create checklists, checks and balances, how to take care of the caregiver, how do we get someone to bathe, how do we get someone to eat, how do I handle the frustration, how do I handle the emotional ups and downs and twists and turns that can happen. You can go through 5 different emotions in an hour because of the person changing, and this person is changing right before your eyes, and there's nothing you can do about it, and it's heart-wrenching, it's depressing, it's sad. So we talk to people about stages of grief and how you can handle those things, and even, family dynamics. I learned very quickly in my career that not everybody's family grew up like mine. And not everybody has a great family and a strong family, and there's fights in, maybe not everyone had a great relationship with their parents either. There were parents out there who were, physically abusive, emotionally abusive, alcoholics. So now as a child, how do you take care of a person who didn't treat you very well or love you or wasn't proud of you? And so we talk a little bit about the family dynamics too, and how do you work with families who don't have a strong system in place, and how do you put one in place? Because the ultimate goal is to take care of this person with dementia. So we try to hit upon just about every emotion. We attempted to hit on just about every challenge. I can tell you, even in all the years I did what I did, I tell people I saw a lot. I don't know that I saw it all, but I saw a lot. And so I'm really trying to, in a very succinct way, give my experience to people and say, try this or put this in place or be proactive here, so you don't have to go through the same challenges that I learned to go through.
Right. I one of the things that I hear in how you're describing, the book and the work that you're doing is it really fills the gaps.
That's exactly what we've tried to do, is to fill the gaps. And as many family caregivers as I've seen, and as many professional caregivers as I've worked with, they are the worst at taking care of themselves. They believe they give everything they have and then some, to everybody in their lives, and they forget that they're important too. And so that's one of the very first things that we address. When I speak at conferences or I do trainings, I will say, how many people have flown in an airplane? Most people raise their hands. We 95, 98, 100% of people raise their hands. I go, okay, well, if you actually pay attention to the flight attendant when they're doing their safety things, what's one of the things they say? They say if the cabin loses pressure, an oxygen mask is going to fall. And what's the next step? You put it on yourself first before you start assisting others. You take care of yourself first. So if the airlines know this, shouldn't we know this when we're caring for people? So we talk a lot about how to really truly care for yourself, because when you don't, a caregiver will burn out. A professional caregiver will burn out. A family caregiver will burn out. And if you burn out, who's going to be there to take care of that individual? So we really emphasize self care and the importance of it, when you're caring for other individuals, on top of filling the gaps. When someone's not eating, and what do you do? When someone won't take a bath, what do you do? When they put on the same clothes every day, what are you supposed to do? Because those are the things that cause caregivers to get very stressed out about.
Right. Right. So, what you've got a book that's coming out. You've got an amazing body of work that you're getting out into the world. What are the problems that you're solving for in the business today?
Um, in the business, I still think that there's a lot of people who don't know what we do or who we are. So we're still trying to educate people about Silver Tsunami and what we can offer. It's growing because the more people who meet me, the more people who know who I am. I'm a very unique little niche. It's not like you can go anywhere to get this. There's a lot of people out there that claim to be dementia experts because they've taken a course or they've taken a class. It's very hard for someone to keep up with me in a conversation just because I've spent several years gaining this education and knowledge. And so I think our biggest thing for the business is really helping people understand who we are and what we can do. And as much networking as I've done over the last couple of years with this has been extremely helpful. Um, but if you Googled help with dementia, more often than not, what's going to come up is, well, Teepa Snow. She's an international dementia expert, an amazing lady. Um, but a lot of it is memory care and assisted livings. This is how we can help you. And that's not really what families are looking for. And it's not that there's not great information with the Alzheimer's Association or the Dementia Society or Alzheimer's Foundation. They all have wonderful information. What is problematic for and challenging for families is, how do they take that and apply it to their personal situation? That's where it gets to be overwhelming and frustrating for families. So that's where we come in and we fill that gap. We teach them, how do you take this information and apply it to your personal situation? And I mean, I get hired to go out and do an evaluation of the home, and I can tell them, here's the things you might want to think about as you age or as your parents are aging. And it's just like, this is how you can be proactive to prevent a fall, or to prevent someone from, getting up on a step ladder and falling, and breaking a hip. What I find is that most people think, like senior living right now, thinks the status quo is good enough, that they don't need any to change anything that they're doing. They have their beds are full. It's very rare when you ask a senior living what sets you apart from someone else. Typically, the answer they'll tell you is our people. Well, your people can leave, and now what sets you apart, right? And so I really would love to get into the senior living space and say, here's what will set you apart if you do these things in your independent living. We really, um, most people kind of go, well, I'm not sure that you're legit. Okay, well, that's fine if you don't think that. And so I really want them to talk to people that I've worked with and say, here's what Kathy's been able to do. Here's what Kathy came in and helped us with. And that's really where we've started growing is word of mouth. That's really what has helped me. Especially, I mean, I have a neurologist here in Denver who's giving out my name. I've never met him. I've never met this lady, but I've worked with some of her patients, and she sees them coming in and sees what's happening. And someone else who knew me happened to take her dad into this doctor's office, and she came back and said, "Do you know that they're giving out your name?" I go, "No, but that's a good thing. If they haven't met me
Absolutely.
and they believe in what I'm doing, that's fantastic." So that's one of my goals right now in the January is to actually stop by and meet this doctor and give face to face, and so she can say I've shaken her hand. I know who she is, because I think so many people out there are worried about scams, and they should be. There's a lot of scam artists out there. We don't want our elderly parents taken advantage of. We don't want them spending money on something that's going to be a waste. So I certainly understand that. But I really try hard to just educate someone. I don't ever convince somebody they need to use me because someone won't just convince them right out of it. And so I just say, here's the information, here are the options, here's what we can do. And then when they choose to move forward, I do a lot of testimonial things and say, would you be okay if you did do a testimonial video? Because when I can send some of that stuff out, it really helps people understand that I'm really not trying to just sell them something. It's not a scam. It is hard work. There's no doubt about it. I mean, implementing 7 things, changing a lifestyle program, that's not easy because we develop bad habits because we're human. So there is some work to it, but if you put in the effort, then you reap the rewards from it.
Where is it going for you? What's your vision, your dream, maybe your hope for the future in this work, for your business? What's ahead?
I think the ultimate goal for me would be to have Silver Tsunami located in every state in the United States. We have an office in every state. You can call here. I mean, with the virtual thing, we can certainly work with people virtually. I have traveled to places just to meet with people if they're willing to pay the cost for me to travel. My goal right now is to educate as many people as we can because if we can change the statistics for somebody who their parent got a dementia diagnosis but never had to travel that journey. If we can help people stay cognitively strong where they never got the diagnosis at all, that changes the statistics. So we're trying with every single day, with every client we work with, to make a difference in our corner of the world to help start changing those statistics out there.
Beautiful. If somebody who's listening is inspired by what you're sharing, maybe they have somebody in their family or a friend or a neighbor that they are like, hey, maybe Kathy can help us out. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you or to find out more?
Our website is www.mysilvertsunami.com. There is a contact form on there. People can register to do a 1 hour, no obligation, no cost consultation with me and ask a lot of questions. There are times I never hear from somebody again, and there are times people come back and say, I have more questions. And so we work out what that looks like for them in their situation and where they're located. And so that's usually the easiest way. People can certainly text me and call me. That number is 720-773-1023, and that number is also on our website. I do get people who call or text or say, I heard about you. Could you call me? We try to really get them to register through the website first, just so that we can keep things organized. My husband prefers them to registering through their website because I'll just take phone calls. I'll just take text messages because I'm just trying to help people. But we really want to stay organized and make sure if somebody has requested something that we follow up with them, we get them the information they need. Every person I talk to has a different story. So we do not use a blanket approach. I mean, they can get on. We have an electronic book with tips and tricks. I think there's 10 of them. They can download that at no cost. It gets them started on some things until they're waiting to schedule time with me. And so the busier I get, the longer it's going to take to schedule time with me, clearly. I really work hard to get somebody in within a week to 2 weeks of meeting with me once we get a contact form request.
Incredible. Well, I really encourage any of our listeners, if they have questions, we'll make sure to include the link to your website and the link to your registration form
Thank you.
below. I support your husband's request.
Thank you. I thought you might.
I do. I certainly do. So please find the website. And what about the book? What at this point can people do? Is there a wait list? Is there a way to say, "Hey, I want to be notified"?
So right now, actually, before the book is actually released, if people do visit the website, the mysilvertsunami.com, you can purchase the book at a discounted price. And so we've actually pre-sold about 50 books. In December, anyone who purchased a book they received the first chapter one unedited that they could already start reading. And so anyone who continues to purchase the book, will send that out to them until the book is released. But yes, we've had a lot of people we've gotten some interest from it. So we are offering the discounted price before the book is actually released.
Amazing. So we'll make sure to include that link below as well. So if you want to get to be first in line for the book, make sure to find the link below. And Kathi, what maybe a message or a word of encouragement or anything that you'd like to share as a closing for those that are watching or listening?
Well, I tell people the cards you were dealt are not necessarily the cards you have to play with, or the cards that you now have a hand because there was a traumatic brain injury or a stroke. You don't have to continue down that road. There are things that can be done to change and reverse the cognitive decline or reverse the damage that has been done to make someone cognitively strong so that they can stay as independent as long as possible.
Amazing. Thank you for that. And I encourage people to take action. Like you said, the a diagnosis is not a sentence, actually. There's so much that can be done in that space. And we'll be better for it as everybody individually, our families, our communities will be better for it. So I encourage people to if even if it's not something that you've had the experience of firsthand in your life yet, it's probably worth taking some time and educating. There's one direction that we're all going, and it's getting older. You
That's
know,
correct.
so let's do that with grace, with beauty, and with good cognitive health.
Absolutely agree with you.
Well, thank you again for taking the time and being with us on the Conscious Solutions podcast. Thank you to all those that have been tuned in today. This is another episode of the Conscious Solutions podcast. Every conversation reminds us that the future depends on systems we build today. And if today's episode resonated with you, please share it forward. My name is Brandon Barclay. Stay present, stay curious, and keep building with heart.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Conscious Solutions podcast and for being part of a movement that supports the people who support the people. If today's conversation inspired you, share it forward, follow the show, and stay connected for upcoming episodes. And if you're a founder, a practitioner, or an organization doing meaningful work in the healing or wellness space, or you're looking for support in building systems that help your mission grow, reach out. I'd love to hear your story and explore what's possible. Until next time, stay curious and keep building with heart.